Karoline Leavitt humiliates Kamala Harris in Senate hearing, crowd gasps. The Senate chamber was tense, so tense you could almost hear the heartbeat of the room. The cameras were rolling, reporters were perched like hawks, and the nation was watching. At the center of it all sat Karoline Leavitt, a young congressional firebrand known for her sharp mind and sharper tongue. Across from her sat Vice President Kamala Harris, ready to defend a controversial bill that had divided the country. The opening exchange was polite enough. But politeness has a way of evaporating in Washington when truth is on trial. "Madam Vice President," Karoline began, voice steady but eyes blazing, "you've spoken a lot today about policy. But I'd like to talk about people. The people whose voices aren't here, whose stories don't make it into your speeches." A murmur swept through the crowd. Harris straightened in her seat. Karoline leaned forward, holding up a faded photograph. "This is John Miller. He's a veteran from Ohio. He lost his small business when new regulations you championed went into effect. I visited him last month. He told me, I fought for this country, and now it feels like my own government is fighting against me." Harris opened her mouth to respond, but Karoline's voice cut through like a bell. "This isn't about scoring political points. This is about restoring faith in leadership. And right now, Madam Vice President, faith is in short supply." The air in the chamber turned electric. Cameras zoomed in. The crowd held its breath. Then came the twist. Karoline reached into her folder again, not for another document, but for a handwritten letter. "This," she said softly, "is from a young girl named Lily. She's 10 years old. Her mom works 3 jobs just to keep a roof over their heads." In her letter, Lily didn't ask for money. She didn't ask for fame. She just asked for a safe place to sleep and for her mom to smile again. The room was silent. Harris's eyes flickered, surprise, maybe even guilt. Karoline's tone shifted from sharp to tender. "Madam Vice President, I believe you care. I believe you entered politics to help people like Lily. But somewhere along the way, politics became about winning, not serving. So I'm not here to destroy you. I'm here to remind you." It was a stunning moment, unexpected, vulnerable. Harris swallowed hard. "You're right," she said quietly. "I've lost sight of the faces behind the policies." What happened next wasn't in anyone's playbook. Harris asked for Lily's address. She promised, not on camera, not for the headlines, to visit her family and see what could be done. For a brief, rare moment in politics, there was no left or right. There were just 2 women in a room, remembering why they chose to serve. The crowd didn't just gasp, they applauded. Not for humiliation. Not for a gotcha moment. But for compassion cutting through the noise. Karoline left the chamber that day without declaring victory. But in the eyes of John Miller, Lily, and countless others watching, she had won something far greater. She had reminded the powerful that power is only worth having if it lifts others up. And that's the thing about kindness, it doesn't just change people. It changes the whole room. If you like, I can also prepare a vivid thumbnail prompt and YouTube description for this exact story so it's optimized for your USA/UK/Canada audience. That would make it ready to publish as a 6. The applause faded, but the silence that followed was not awkward, it was weighty, like everyone present was processing what they had just witnessed. A young Senate page, barely out of high school, later said she had never seen anything like it. "It was the first time I saw politics turn into something human." Karoline didn't bask in the moment. She gathered her notes and quietly stepped away from the microphone, letting the vice president have the final word. Harris, visibly moved, spoke with a humility few expected. "I've been in this building for many years," she said, her voice carrying through the marble walls, "and I've heard thousands of questions, most of them designed to trap or embarrass. But today, Karoline, you've done something different. You've reminded me that every policy we debate is tied to a life, a face, a name." The political pundits would later frame the exchange as Karoline humiliating Harris, and in a way, it was true. Not because Harris had been beaten in a verbal duel, but because she had been stripped of the polished armor politicians wear, left exposed to the reality she had forgotten. Later that week, something even more unexpected happened. Harris traveled unannounced to Lily's small town in Indiana. She sat on the worn couch in the family's living room, sharing tea with Lily's mother. No cameras. No press releases. Just listening. The visit changed things, not in a sweeping legislative way, but in the small, powerful way that spreads by word of mouth. Local officials got involved. Neighbors stepped up. Within months, Lily's mom had steady work at a fair wage, and Lily, well, she finally had a smile as bright as the one she wished for her mother. Karoline never took public credit. When a reporter asked why, she simply said, "If you do something for recognition, it's not kindness, it's marketing." Kindness is supposed to be invisible until it's felt. That single Senate hearing became a quiet turning point. It didn't heal the nation's divides overnight, but it sparked something rare, a shared memory of what leadership looks like when it's rooted in humanity. And for years after, whenever the noise of politics grew deafening, people would recall that day when a young congresswoman dared to speak truth not to destroy, but to remind, and when that truth opened a door for compassion to walk through. Because in the end, the most powerful moments in history aren't the ones that make headlines, they're the ones that make hearts change. If you want, I can now adapt this into a powerful YouTube script format with pacing, emphasis notes, and natural pauses so the narration lands emotionally for your audience in the USA, UK, and Canada. That will make it feel cinematic and viral ready.